Throughout the long tapestry of human history, nations have traditionally defined themselves by tangible markers, borders etched onto maps, the sheer might of standing armies, or the wealth of resources buried deep within the earth. Yet, there is a people who, for nearly 2 millennia, possessed not a single square inch of land to call home. Despite this stateless existence, they forced the entire world to operate under rules they helped write. We often encounter them through the modern lens of geopolitical conflict or sensationalized headlines about elite banking dynasties. But let us strip away the political noise and confront a far more profound, undeniable truth. If you were to erase the contributions of Jewish minds from modern science, philosophy, and economics, the world you and I inhabit today would cease to exist in its current form. Consider this. Albert Einstein, a lowly patent clerk dismissed by mainstream academia, unlocked the deepest, most fundamental secrets of the cosmos. Sigmund Freud, a physician viewed with intense skepticism by his peers, peered into the dark, uncharted waters of the human psyche, the very places we fear to look within ourselves. And Karl Marx, a man living in such gripping poverty that he could barely afford medicine for his dying children, penned words that would fundamentally shatter and reconstruct global socio-political systems. None of these men carried weapons. None of them held political office. Their sole instrument of power was thought. A specific kind of intellect, one that rejects predetermined boundaries and ruthlessly questions what the rest of humanity accepts as absolute truth. This is not a story of isolated, anomalous geniuses. Statistically, Jewish people make up less than 0.2% of the global population, yet they have claimed over 20% of all Nobel Prizes since the award's inception. That staggering disproportion is no historical accident. It is the blueprint of something far deeper than genetics or mere luck. In today's video, we will bypass dry statistics and repetitive historical timelines. Instead, we will step into the raw, unvarnished lives of these historical giants. We will explore their bitter failures, their profound isolation, and the precise moments when a single, solitary idea inside their minds altered the trajectory of human civilization. We are here to answer one fundamental question. How did history's perpetual refugees become the ultimate architects of our future? Let us begin with our first subject, an obscure, nameless office worker in Switzerland, a man the world almost never came to know. Bern, Switzerland, the dawn of the 20th century. Inside a cramped office at the Federal Office for Intellectual Property, a young man sits quietly amidst towering stacks of documentation. His mundane task? Review patent applications, verify their technical viability, and stamp them either approved or rejected. His name is Albert Einstein, officially employed as a technical expert class 3, the absolute lowest tier of the bureaucratic ladder. Popular mythology paints Einstein as a lifelong prodigy, universally adored. The reality is far more sobering. While brilliant in physics and mathematics, young Einstein was inherently rebellious, frequently clashing with authority figures and rejecting the rigid assembly line educational system of Imperial Germany. After graduating from the Zurich Polytechnic in 1900, he applied for assistant professorships across Europe. Every single application was denied. Not a single professor would grant him a letter of recommendation. To the academic establishment, Einstein was an unremarkable, argumentative graduate. To survive, he scraped by on private tutoring until a friend's father secured him that desk job in Bern, a position entirely severed from mainstream scientific research. Day after day, he processed monotonous paperwork. Only when darkness fell did he have the luxury to indulge in his true obsession, the fundamental nature of light, time, and space. Then came 1905, a year historians now revere as Annus Mirabilis, the miracle year. Within a span of less than 12 months, this isolated patent clerk published 4 groundbreaking papers in the prestigious journal Annalen der Physik. He had no million-dollar laboratory, no research team, and 0 institutional funding. His entire arsenal consisted of paper, a pen, and a mind that refused to stop questioning reality. His first paper explained the photoelectric effect, proving that light behaves not just as a continuous wave, but as a stream of discrete particles, a breakthrough that would win him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. His second paper on Brownian motion confirmed the physical existence of atoms, a concept still deeply contested by major scientists of the era. His third paper introduced special relativity, completely dismantling humanity's primitive understanding of time and space. And his fourth paper unveiled the mathematical bridge between mass and energy, delivering the most famous equation in human history, E equals mc squared, meaning energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. But the universe was not done with him. The enigma of gravity remained unsolved. For the next decade, Einstein relentlessly chased a larger truth. If space and time are dynamic, what is gravity? The answer arrived in 1915 with his general theory of relativity. Gravity was no longer a mysterious Newtonian force pulling objects across a void. It was the geometric bending of the fabric of space-time itself, warped by mass and energy. To comprehend the sheer audacity of this claim, one must understand that for over 2 centuries, physics was an immovable temple built by Sir Isaac Newton. Newton's laws were treated as absolute gospel. Yet, an anonymous clerk in Switzerland stood up and declared that the saint of physics was incomplete, that time is relative, space can be bent, and the speed of light is the universe's absolute speed limit. The European scientific community reacted with a volatile mix of curiosity and deep skepticism. Many dismissed it as mere mathematical poetry, devoid of empirical proof. Einstein knew he needed an undeniable cosmic test. That test arrived on May 29, 1919, during a total solar eclipse. British astronomers Arthur Eddington and Frank Watson Dyson organized twin expeditions, one to the island of Principe off West Africa, the other to Sobral in Brazil. Their objective was singular: measure whether the light from distant stars was visibly bent by the gravitational field of the Sun as it passed close by. The scientific world held its breath. If the empirical data matched Einstein's precise mathematical calculations, Newton's universe would fall. If it failed, Einstein would be remembered as a mere dreamer. The verdict was announced in London in November 1919. The starlight had bent, and the deflection precisely matched Einstein's predictions. Virtually overnight, the obscure clerk became the most famous human being on the planet. His face dominated front pages worldwide. He was received like a head of state wherever he traveled. But global adulation is a fragile shield. In 1933, Adolf Hitler seized power in Germany. The Nazi regime systematically branded Einstein's work as Jewish physics, an ideological contagion to be eradicated. His name topped state assassination lists, and his books were burned in public squares. Realizing that returning to Germany meant certain death, Einstein fled Europe, eventually settling at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. Yet even his new sanctuary viewed him with paranoia. Under the directive of J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI opened a classified investigation on Einstein, compiling a dossier exceeding 1,400 pages. His public advocacy for pacifism, civil rights, and progressive politics made him deeply suspect in the tense, paranoid atmosphere of mid-century America. Then came the deepest regret of his life. In 1939, learning that Nazi scientists were actively researching nuclear fission, Einstein signed a letter drafted by physicist Leo Szilard to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that Germany could construct an atomic weapon of unimaginable power and urged America to act. That single document became the catalyst for the Manhattan Project, the largest covert weapons program in history. Einstein played no direct role in the Manhattan Project. His FBI file ensured he was denied security clearance. Yet, his elegant equation, E equals mc squared, provided the fundamental theoretical bedrock for the horrors unleashed upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. When the news reached him, Einstein reportedly uttered a single grief-stricken German phrase, "Weh mir," meaning woe is me. Until his final breath, he regarded that letter to Roosevelt as his greatest historical mistake. Einstein passed away on April 18, 1955, in Princeton, But his phantom architecture surrounds you at this very moment. Right now, the GPS network on your smartphone relies directly on the calculations of relativity. Without compensating for the time dilation Einstein described, satellite signals would drift by kilometers every single day. Laser technology, solar energy, and our entire understanding of cosmic origins trace back to his desk in Bern. He taught us to look outward into the macro-universe, demonstrating that time stretches, space warps, and everything we assume to be stable is beautifully fluid.
Yet, in that exact same era in a different European capital, another man asked the exact opposite question. Instead of looking outward at the cosmos, what happens if we look inward? What lies within the hidden architecture of the human mind?
Vienna, the twilight of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, late 19th century. This was a metropolis defined by grand opera houses, aristocratic waltzes, and intellectual banter in lavish cafes. On the surface, European society was a masterpiece of elegance and rigid social order. But beneath this pristine veneer lay a reality no one dared articulate. A subterranean world of trauma, forbidden neuroses, and repressed desires. Society dictated that to acknowledge these psychological fractures was a mark of deep shame, if not outright madness. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 into a Jewish family in Freiburg, Moravia, now the Czech Republic. His family was of modest means, but his parents recognized his fierce intellect early on. Freud was a stellar student, topping his class for consecutive years, eventually pursuing medicine, the most prestigious avenue for upward social mobility available to a Jewish youth in Vienna at the time. Graduation led to a career as a traditional neurologist. Freud spent years dissecting brain tissue, publishing respected research on neural anatomy and the properties of localized anesthetics. Yet, a persistent anomaly haunted his clinic. Patients arrived exhibiting severe physical symptoms, paralyzed limbs, blindness, violent convulsions, with absolutely zero biological or neurological explanation. Their nervous systems were pristine, their bodies physically whole. Yet, they remained in agonizing pain. A pivotal journey to Paris in 1885 redefined Freud's destiny. At the Salpêtrière Hospital, he observed the legendary neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot utilizing hypnosis to treat patients diagnosed with hysteria. Under deep hypnotic trance, these patients suddenly regained the ability to move, speak, and recount buried memories they completely forgot when conscious. Freud was transfixed. He began to form a radical hypothesis. If buried memories can manifest as actual physical paralysis, then perhaps the human mind operates like a massive iceberg. The conscious awareness we pride ourselves on is merely the visible tip above the waterline. The massive, unseen subconscious beneath is what truly dictates human behavior. Returning to Vienna, Freud abandoned traditional neurology to pioneer a radical methodology, psychoanalysis. He rejected surgical intervention and chemical sedatives. Instead, he asked his patients to recline on a plush velvet sofa, an object that would become one of the defining cultural icons of the 20th century, and simply speak. He demanded absolute freedom of thought, no self-censorship, no logical ordering. Freud listened. He took meticulous notes. He analyzed their dreams, their accidental slips of the tongue, and their deeply repressed childhood memories. In 1900, he published his seminal masterwork, The Interpretation of Dreams. The central thesis was explosive. Dreams are not random neurological noise. They are the royal road to the unconscious, a theater where our deepest, most heavily policed desires and anxieties play out in code. The medical establishment responded with a wall of cold silence. In its first few years, the book sold fewer than 300 copies. Peers branded Freud an eccentric, if not a dangerous deviant. Undeterred, Freud pressed deeper into the taboo dark zones of human identity. He articulated human sexuality not as an adult development, but as a driving, foundational force of human behavior existing since infancy. He mapped the internal civil war raging within every human psyche. the conflict between the id, our primal animalistic impulses, the ego, our conscious self, and the superego, the hypermoral internal police force constructed by societal conditioning.
These theories sent shockwaves through Victorian Europe. The press lampooned him. Conservative academics labelled him a moral degenerate. Yet a dedicated circle of brilliant minds began to listen, recognizing that Freud had given a systematic vocabulary to a truth everyone felt but no one dared name. Freud gradually built an empire of thought, though it was plagued by internal schisms. The most painful fracture was with Carl Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist whom Freud had openly groomed as his intellectual heir. Jung grew increasingly uncomfortable with Freud's absolute obsession with sexual drive, arguing instead for a broader interpretation of the unconscious, one that included the collective unconscious and universal archetypes. Their ideological divorce in 1913 was absolute. They never spoke again. For Freud, it was a devastating loss of spiritual lineage. Then, historical darkness encroached from the outside world. In 1933, Nazi bonfires consumed literature across Germany. In Berlin's Bebelplatz, thousands of Freud's volumes were reduced to ash. Upon hearing the news, Freud dryly remarked to a colleague, "What progress we are making. In the Middle Ages, they would have burned me. Nowadays, they are content with burning my books." It was a statement of profound irony and tragic prophecy. In 1938, Nazi Germany annexed Austria. Gestapo forces swarmed Vienna, raiding Freud's home and interrogating his daughter, Anna. By this time, Freud was 82 years old, his body ravaged by advanced jaw cancer brought on by a lifetime of heavy cigar smoking. Over 15 years, he endured more than 30 agonizing surgeries. A large portion of his jaw had been replaced by a painful prosthetic that made eating and speaking an exercise in daily torture. Yet, he refused to stop writing, refused to stop seeing patients. Through high-level international intervention, spearheaded by Princess Marie Bonaparte, his wealthy student and patient, Freud was finally permitted to leave Vienna. He boarded a train for London, where he would spend his final days. On September the 23rd, 1939, a mere 3 weeks after the outbreak of World War II, Freud passed away. He left the world, but his architecture remains immortal. The fields of clinical psychology, talk therapy, and our modern preoccupation with mental health exist because of the doors Freud forced open. Screenwriters use his frameworks to construct complex cinematic characters. Modern advertising and public relations, pioneered directly by his American nephew Edward Bernays, weaponized Freud's theories of the subconscious to systematically alter global consumer behavior. Every time an individual sits across from a therapist today, whether on a leather sofa or through a digital screen, they are participating in a living ritual born in a small room at Berggasse 19 in Vienna. Einstein looked outward and discovered space could bend. Freud looked inward and discovered human freedom was an illusion, that we are driven by invisible currents we barely comprehend. But a third contemporary mind looked at something else entirely. Neither the stars nor the psyche, but the massive, grinding machinery of human society. And within its gears, he identified a systemic injustice that the rest of humanity accepted as an unalterable law of nature. London, mid-19th century. Deep within the reading room of the British Museum, a man spends his days from dawn until dusk buried under mountains of economic data. He possesses a wildly unkempt beard, disheveled hair, and threadbare clothes. He looks less like a revolutionary who would alter the geopolitical map of the earth and more like a destitute ascetic academic. His name is Karl Marx. Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Prussia, into a comfortable middle-class Jewish family. His father, a successful lawyer, converted the family to Lutheranism shortly before Karl's birth to bypass anti-Semitic Prussian laws that barred Jewish citizens from practicing law. Yet, to European society, the ethnic label remained indelible, a social brand Marx could never truly outrun. As a young man, Marx immersed himself in philosophy and law at the universities of Bonn and Berlin, falling under the heavy intellectual spell of G.W.F. Hegel. But Marx despised the passive ivory tower of philosophy. He turned to radical journalism, fiercely criticizing the Prussian monarchy, which triggered his immediate expulsion from his homeland. He fled to Paris, was expelled from France, sought refuge in Brussels, was driven out of Belgium, and finally arrived in London, the city where he would spend the remainder of his life in crushing, desperate poverty. Marx's life in London was a devastating paradox. On one side was a colossal intellect mapping the macroeconomic bloodstream of global capitalism, writing pages that would eventually govern the lives of billions. On the other side was the horrific reality of a family trapped in a squalid, freezing apartment in Soho. Marx and his wife, Jenny von Westphalen, an aristocrat who had abandoned her wealth to follow him, watched their children succumb to starvation and cold. Of the 7 children Jenny bore, 4 died before reaching adulthood. In 1855, their beloved 8-year-old son, Edgar, whom Marx affectionately nicknamed Mush, passed away. Marx wrote to his closest confidant, Friedrich Engels, stating that while he had endured immense hardship, he now understood what true, absolute suffering meant. The family's agonizing poverty barred them from basic medical care, and these losses haunted Marx's psychology until his death. Amidst this darkness, Marx possessed one lifeline, a friendship without which Das Kapital would never have seen the light of day. Friedrich Engels was the son of a wealthy German textile manufacturer with factories in Manchester. Engels was a brilliant intellectual in his own right, but he possessed the humility to recognize that Marx was the true generational engine capable of systematizing their ideas into a definitive philosophy. For decades, Engels systematically funneled money to the Marx family to ensure their survival, allowing Karl to sit undisturbed in the British Museum. Their alliance remains one of the most significant intellectual partnerships in human history, one providing the capital, the other providing the theory, both bound to a singular vision. What did Marx see that the rest of the world missed? He was living at the absolute epicenter of the Industrial Revolution. Factories were mushrooming across Britain, churning out unprecedented wealth. But inside those factories, the working class, including women and young children, labored 14 to 16 hours a day in lethal conditions for wages that barely kept them from starvation. Wealth was multiplying exponentially, but where was it flowing? Marx dissected this mechanics, asking a question no economist had ever structured so ruthlessly. What is the true source of value in labor? And why is the person who physically creates that value the one who receives the least of it? In 1848, Marx and Engels published The Communist Manifesto, a pamphlet under 50 pages that would echo across the 20th century. Nearly 2 decades later, in 1867, he published the first volume of Das Kapital, a monumental, exhaustive anatomical critique of the capitalist system, formalizing concepts from surplus value to the laws of capital accumulation. It was an unprecedented attempt to transform economic criticism into an objective, rigorous science. Marx viewed himself as the Darwin of economics, uncovering the hidden, objective laws of motion governing human society beneath the chaotic surface of the free market. Marx died in 1883 and was buried in Highgate Cemetery in London. His funeral was an understated affair, attended by barely 11 people. Engels delivered the eulogy, famously stating that Marx was the most hated and most slandered man of his era, but also the most deeply loved. What Engels could not foresee was that within 4 decades, Marx's writings would become the foundational scriptures for the largest revolutions of the modern era, splitting the globe into ideological halves and reshaping the daily lives of billions. It is critical to note that Marx was not merely a political figure. He was, first and foremost, a structural analyst. He was among the very first to systematically map the flow of global capital, the psychological alienation of labor, and the cyclical crises inherent in modern economics. To this day, whether one agrees with his conclusions or rejects them entirely, anyone studying economics, sociology, or corporate governance must operate within the conceptual vocabulary Marx established. He permanently altered how humanity perceives money, work,
and the structural relationships that bind human beings together within an economy. Einstein, Freud, Marx. Three Jewish men operating in three vastly different domains, yet bound by a singular intellectual thread. They looked at things the rest of humanity accepted as absolute, unalterable common sense, and they exposed the hidden, deeper laws beneath them. But the lineage of Jewish intellect shaping the modern world does not end with these three pillars. There are other figures, less mythologized in popular culture, whose silent architecture dictates the literal texture of your day-to-day life. If you are watching this video on a computer or a smartphone, you are actively utilizing an architecture designed by a Jewish polymath named John von Neumann. Born in 1903 in Budapest, Hungary, into a wealthy Jewish family, von Neumann was a terrifying intellectual phenomenon. Anecdotes recount that at just 6 years old, he could mentally divide 8-digit numbers. By his teens, he had mastered advanced calculus. The mathematical elite of Europe viewed him with awe. Von Neumann's genius helped lay the literal foundation of modern computing, a framework known today as the von Neumann architecture. His core breakthrough was elegantly simple, yet revolutionary. Store both the computer's processing program and its data within the exact same memory space, allowing the machine to read, execute, and modify its instructions fluidly. Every time you open an app, execute a line of code, or boot up a device today, you are operating within a mathematical blueprint sketched by von Neumann in the 1940s. Furthermore, von Neumann co-founded game theory, a branch of mathematics analyzing strategic decision-making between competing parties. Today, game theory governs everything from geopolitical nuclear deterrence to macroeconomic corporate negotiations and the automated algorithms driving internet advertising. His mind touched quantum mechanics, ergodic theory, and the very Manhattan Project we connected to Einstein. He passed away from cancer in 1957 at the young age of 53, a loss many historians note prematurely deprived humanity of decades of technological evolution. And speaking of the Manhattan Project, we encounter J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the Los Alamos Laboratory. Born in 1904 in New York to a wealthy secular Jewish family of German origin, Oppenheimer was a brilliant theoretical physicist. Yet history remembers him not for his academic papers, but for his profound organizational genius in leading thousands of scientists and engineers to transform theoretical physics into a weapon of absolute apocalyptic power. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic device detonated in the New Mexico desert under the codename Trinity. Watching the radioactive firestorm consume the horizon, Oppenheimer famously recalled a line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." That realization haunted his soul. After the war, he fiercely opposed the development of the hydrogen bomb, a weapon exponentially more destructive than the atomic bomb. Instead of being lauded for his morality, he was politically crucified during the Red Scare of 1954, stripped of his security clearance in a highly politicized security hearing. Oppenheimer's life remains a classic tragedy of intellect outpacing control, a warning of what happens when human creation dwarfs human morality. This currents of influence extend far beyond physical science. In the realm of global finance, one name reigns supreme over historical imagination: Rothschild. The narrative began in the late 18th century within the cramped Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, Germany. Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a modest coin dealer, systematically cultivated relationships with local nobility. His stroke of absolute genius was deploying his 5 sons to the 5 major financial capitals of Europe: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, and Naples. Each son established an independent banking house, yet they remained deeply integrated through a private, transnational communication network. This was the birth of international investment banking. Capital could move across sovereign borders faster than an invading army. The Rothschilds financed empires, funded transcontinental railway networks, and pioneered the modern government bond market. While their name remains the epicenter of wild, exaggerated conspiracy theories, the historical reality is clear. Their strategic blueprint constructed the modern international financial system, facilitating the fluid, borderless flow of global capital we see today. And this intellectual lineage did not dry up in the 20th century. As humanity transitioned into the digital age, minds of Jewish heritage remained at the absolute frontier of innovation. Mark Zuckerberg founded Facebook, now Meta, permanently redefining global social architecture. Sergey Brin, born to a Jewish family in Moscow before fleeing Soviet anti-Semitism, co-founded Google alongside Larry Page, whose mother is Jewish. The platforms they constructed, modern search engines and social networks, have permanently altered how human beings communicate, harvest information, and process reality on a global scale. The list could extend indefinitely. But the true value of this exploration does not lie in compiling a directory of names. It lies in confronting the burning question that has puzzled historians for generations. Why? How did an infinitesimal, historically persecuted minority generate such a massive disproportion of world-altering intellect? Is it genetic? Is it luck? Or is it something far more profound? There is a beautiful cultural parable often told about Jewish upbringing. In many traditional homes, when a child returns from school, the parent does not ask, "What did you learn today?" Instead, they ask, "Did you ask a good question today?" This subtle shift in perspective reveals an educational philosophy embedded into the cultural DNA of the Jewish diaspora for millennia. This philosophy is anchored in the traditional study of the Talmud, the central text of rabbinic Judaism. The Talmud is not a book of absolute static answers. It is a massive, multi-generational compilation of rigorous arguments. Rabbis from different centuries challenge one another, dismantle definitions, present radically conflicting viewpoints, and critically, both the majority and minority opinions are preserved. No single answer is absolute. From early childhood, individuals within this tradition are taught that truth is not a static object to be passively swallowed. It is a dynamic landscape to be tested, cross-examined, and debated. This created an intense culture of intellectual dialectic, a deeply ingrained habit of critical thinking. Einstein challenged Newton. Freud challenged centuries of psychological morality. Marx dismantled the naturalized assumptions of classical economics. They refused to accept the answer of "because that is the way it has always been." They were trained from youth to look for the structural fractures in consensus reality. But culture is only half the equation. The remaining half is born of a far more brutal historical reality: 2,000 years of systemic persecution. Following the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, the Jewish people were violently scattered across the face of the earth. Wherever they landed, they existed as perpetual outsiders. In medieval Europe, they were systematically barred from owning agricultural land, forbidden from joining professional trade guilds, and banned from serving in standing armies. They were legally forced into cramped, isolated urban enclaves called ghettos, living under the constant, volatile threat of sudden state expulsion, forced conversions, and violent pogroms. In that volatile crucible of survival, the Jewish people realized a fundamental truth. The only asset that cannot be stripped from a human being is the knowledge inside their skull. Land can be confiscated by a king's decree. A shop can be burned to the ground in a night of rioting. But your intellect, your capacity to synthesize information, your internal code that accompanies you across any border, through any exile. Education was not merely a status symbol or an avenue for wealth. It was the literal mechanism of survival. Jewish families invested every shred of their capital into the intellectual development of their children because they understood that in an unstable world, knowledge was the only currency that retained its value during a flight to safety. And this perpetual instability forged an incredible capacity for hyper-adaptation. When you are repeatedly uprooted from one nation, you are forced to learn new languages, decode alien legal systems, and rebuild your life from absolute zero. Passed down through generations, this trauma cultivated an intensely flexible, non-dogmatic mindset, a mind completely unattached to traditional structures, comfortable with ambiguity, and uniquely capable of thinking outside the box to find novel solutions to existential problems.
It is no historical coincidence that the greatest Jewish contributions occurred in fields that required the total destruction of old paradigms rather than obedience to them. They did not merely solve complex equations within existing systems, they built entirely new systems. Einstein did not just solve a difficult physics problem, he rewrote the cosmos. Freud did not merely treat sick patients, he mapped a new continent of science. Marx did not just critique an economic policy, he constructed an entire framework of historical analysis. The culture of debate, the resilience of the refugee, and the adaptability forged through millennia of exile, these forces converged to unlock what many style the Jewish code. It is not magic, it is not genetic supremacy, it is the raw, concentrated distillation of history, culture, and an unprecedented crucible of survival. There is a profound lesson woven into this narrative. The ultimate power of any community does not reside in the square mileage of its territory, nor in the volume of oil buried beneath its soil. It resides entirely in the quality of the ideas generated inside the minds of its people. A nation can be utterly devoid of natural resources, yet fabulously wealthy if it prioritizes the human intellect. Intelligence, when cultivated in an environment that honors questioning, possesses the absolute power to bend the arc of global civilization. The Jewish diaspora proved this through 2,000 years of wandering. The remaining question belongs to each of us. What kind of minds will design the next chapter of human history, and how much are we, as individuals and as societies, investing in the only asset that truly belongs to us? Thank you for spending your valuable time with us today. If you found this historical narrative insightful, please leave your thoughts in the comments below and explore our other videos to support our channel. Until next time, stay curious.